All right, welcome back, everyone, to Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus, alongside producer James Brierton, who you'll probably be hearing from in the next couple of moments because we are covering a topic that is, I think, near and dear to James's heart.
I think we could say that.
Yeah, you're into science, and of course, with that comes space travel. And we've got the SpaceX launch happening in just a few minutes. So you said within maybe 15 or so minutes of this, James?
Yeah, looking at the SpaceX feed right now, which I'm going to put on the screen and take our live bug away, you can see we're about T-minus 15 and a half minutes. We're going to see these fellas and folks and ladies and gents over at SpaceX pop up from time to time. Vanessa and I are also going to be here talking you through what we expect to see. So here's a look right now at Starship 11, Vanessa. This is going to be their 11th test of their very important Starship rocket, which is destined to become part of the Artemis program. They are continuing to test. So, I think one of the most important things we should say right now, Vanessa, is that there is no one on board this rocket, because about 50% of the time in the first 10 tests, there have been some problems. So there have been some fireworks.
Yes.
So there's no one on board. This is a look right now at some of those engines underneath. We're about 14 minutes and 35 seconds, but just to get everyone up to speed on where we are with the countdown process. Vanessa, you want to kind of maybe tag team on some of these here, taking our viewers back to what's been happening over the course of the last few minutes, starting at maybe about T-minus 30 minutes out.
Yeah, and so you were so kind as to outline some of these bullets for
notes.
us. But we've covered a few of these on Live Impact, and kind of to your point, this whole process of getting ready for the launch is run of the mill in the sense like we know what's gonna happen when.
Yeah.
The reason that these launches are always so interesting, as you mentioned, James, is you kind of don't know how it's actually going to happen, whether the launch will actually happen, and if the launch does happen, what will happen after the launch, because we've covered some of the unsuccessful launches, if you will, where, several minutes into these test flights, things go a little haywire and
and sometimes,
explosions.
As you know, the impacts of that have been they've had to close airspace when debris started raining down over the Caribbean. So hopefully that doesn't happen tonight, but that is one of the things we're going to be watching for. We're about 13 and a half minutes out, and everything has been going as planned, or as they like to say in the space industry, nominal. And so that means that about T-minus 30 minutes out, what they started to do as part of their process was the chill down. And that's when the liquid oxygen and the methane lines are conditioned for flight. White vapor appears at the launch pad. We'll be seeing some of that here as the countdown continues. The first visible signs of launch preparations are happening at about that 30-minute mark. Crews clear the exclusion zone. Anyone who's been working on the rocket has to leave the launch pad while flight controllers verify that the propellant temperatures and the pressures are accurate. The airspace and the marine area are evacuated so that the area is completely safe, because obviously we are dealing with a lot of combustion here, and if something were to go wrong at the launch pad, they would want to make sure that there was no one nearby.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, we're down to about 12 minutes and a half away from a potential launch here. So they've already done that process. The next that would be up about 25 minutes before the launch happens is with the super heavy booster in Starship upper stage getting filled with cryogenic propellants. And so there will be sensors monitoring the flow rates, making sure that there are no temperature shocks that could crack valves or fittings. And so the team is going to keep a close watch for leaks, temperature spikes, and then the weather officers confirm if the launch criteria are being met, which we've seen, as we would expect with all sorts of, attempts to get into space. Weather plays a big role in whether you can actually even get off the ground.
That's exactly right. There's a lot of overlap between weather and space nerds, I think, for that very reason. I'll also just remind our viewers, Vanessa and I are walking through with you, and the feed that we're getting and that we're showing you at home right now is this official SpaceX feed. There aren't really a whole lot of other cameras in the area, so I know you're hearing us while watching some other people talk, and that can be a little awkward at times as they go through their kind of pre-game show. But I guarantee you when we get down to launch, Vanessa and I will step back, their anchors will step step back, and all you'll be seeing and hearing is that actual launch process. So we've kind of checked the mark on T-minus 30 and 25 minutes. So to take everyone through what happened just a few minutes ago around the T-minus 20-minute mark, that's when the Starbase and the Hawthorne mission control teams checked the communication loops and confirmed readiness. Each discipline, from propulsion to flight software, everyone had to report go. You hear this sometimes on NASA flights, where they go through each and every department that's in charge of different components to make sure everyone is still go for launch. In this case, engineers at both sites were synced in real time. They were able to immediately troubleshoot if there were any issues that came up. As you can see, the countdown's continuing, so there weren't any. And it's also the moment where hundreds of specialists become kind of one unified launch team, where everyone kind of okays and signs off on their final preparations. So Vanessa, we're about the T-minus 10-minute mark now.
We're about 30 seconds away from this next point, which is the final systems check. So the engine controllers here are about to run final tests on all 33 Raptors and 6 upper stage engines. They'll have guidance and navigation computers that are transitioned into flight mode at that point, and then avionics will verify the communication links with ground tracking stations. They have to have every subsystem reading green before they can continue on with the countdown. And really, I feel like at least one of the launches that we've had, there was a point around 10 minutes where things got scrubbed. So I think it was actually just with that final systems check where it wasn't a go.
Yeah, and one of the things they can do with Starship that they can't do when they're doing, say, a Falcon 9 launch with astronauts to the International Space Station, Vanessa, they can actually pause this for a little bit. They do have some wiggle room. So their launch window opens at about now-ish, 7:15 Eastern Time, 6:15 Central Time, where they are there in the coast of Texas. They did already push it back a couple minutes, so we're about T-minus 9.5 minutes now, and they could pause if they run into any issues. The big crucial pause that we've also seen sometimes comes around the 40-second mark. That is kind of the point of no return, so sometimes they take that opportunity to pause, especially since, once again, there aren't any humans on board, there aren't really any payloads on board, so there's nothing time-sensitive on board other than the fact that they are now charging up this rocket.
Yeah, and so we've just passed the 10-minute mark until launch potentially, so that final system check should be underway as we speak, and then the next one would be at around 5 minutes. I know, James, just to quickly back up, you mentioned that this was part of the Artemis program. Probably worth talking about specifically where that's going to explore, considering there are a lot of areas of space we seemingly want to go as a nation, as also these individual space exploration groups have been talking about Mars and the moon. And so this one, I think, is with the moon, right?
Yeah, so that's exactly right, Vanessa. So Artemis is NASA's return to the moon, the first time that they're looking to put humans back on the moon since we did it with the Apollo program. And Starship will play a role in transporting those human astronauts to the moon. Now, we have successfully seen NASA accomplish Artemis 1, which went up with no humans on board. Artemis 2 is scheduled to happen at some point in the first half of next year, according to the latest timelines. That will bring astronauts back up into space. They will orbit the moon. That'll be the first time humans have orbited the moon in decades, but we're not expected to see humans return to the moon until Artemis 3, which would be roughly 2027, and that would involve riding up on Starship, which would be one of the biggest and most powerful rockets we have seen.
Now, I will say, I mean, we covered the last launch. There was one in August. That seemed to go pretty well. But before that, there were 3 failed launch, including one where we talked about it exploded. So kind of to your point of not putting humans on this particular test launch right now until they are working out every last detail to make sure things will always go smoothly.
Yeah, and I'm listening right now into the SpaceX coverage. They're also talking about how one day they hope to go to Mars, and that's another place that obviously Elon Musk, owner of SpaceX, talks very heavily about. I also want to let our viewers know, as you're just joining us here, any of that white vapor you see, that is completely normal, because what happens is they're putting in the liquid oxygen and the other propellants, and those are cold, and the air there in Texas is kind of humid and warmer, so you're just kind of getting that off-gassing, which is completely normal and isn't anything unusual. I've seen it a couple times with the SpaceX Falcon 9 launches at Kennedy Space Center, whereas they're counting down, it almost looks at one point like the rocket kind of like has a leak or something, but it's just completely normal to see that venting off to the side. So we're now at about 6.5 minutes, Vanessa, and the SpaceX program is actually just showing some nighttime drone video of their complex there, which we have seen in recent headlines continues to grow and grow and grow in Brownsville, Texas, much to the demise or the unhappiness of some of the local residents.
Well, and you were kind of pointing out the fact that what we're watching right now is a feed from SpaceX, and you called it a pregame, which I think is a pretty good characterization as we've now covered a few of these launches. You definitely see there's a lot of hyping up
Yes.
of the entire program, and this is the great stuff that we've done, and look at what we've accomplished. And they go into the nitty-gritty of, the different particulars of the, shuttles, if you will, because I think within the last couple of minutes we actually saw them showing off the tiles, and I mean they really dive into it, and it does seem to be, as long as things go well, a pretty celebratory type of event for all of the people involved in this program. And I mean you can kind of see in some of the shots when they show the crowd watching the
Yes.
monitors. And I mean, we did just see Elon Musk make an appearance as
During
well.
our last commercial break, yes.
I mean, there's a lot of like hype and hoopla and cheering that can happen during these events.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen on these streams before that when unscheduled events, i.e. explosions, happen, they are shown to us live. But sometimes what we've seen, because this is a company-produced stream that has its own narrative, its own incentives.
Objectives.
Yeah. They'll cut away a little earlier than maybe we would like to, we're sort of like, what just happened? But again, this is a very remote location, and we're watching a company produce, this is SpaceX talking about how awesome SpaceX is, to put it bluntly, right? So they also are going to share their video feeds with us and some of their interviews and insights with us, which is a little bit of the give and take, because we know that they have cameras on board this rocket that obviously you and I would not be able to install on their rocket, and so they're going to use their infrastructure, including Starlink, to beam those images back to us. We see right now the wind's about 13 miles an hour, temperature 81 degrees. It looks like a fairly clear sky down there at the Texas coast, as we are now at about 4 minutes, so we can actually probably update Vanessa people on what happened at the T-minus 5 minute mark.
Yeah, so this just happened probably within the last, I'd say, 50 seconds or so. Seemingly they passed the final systems check, moving on to range and road closures. So the range safety will verify that the Gulf airspace and Highway 4 around here, because you mentioned this is Brownsville, Texas, are clear of any ships, aircraft, vehicles. Helicopters and drones will finish their final sweeps around the zone where folks are not able to go. Public beaches, causeways are fully closed, and at this point, the site is going to operate as a controlled launch range.
We had an opportunity a couple years back to talk to the aviation folks at NASA at Kennedy Space Center, Vanessa, because you mentioned that helicopters are doing sweeps because they're looking for anyone who may have violated that enclosure, that safety enclosure, whether on foot or by air or by boat. And these are things that have been detected in years past. We had a launch at NASA at Kennedy Space Center that they had to skip over because a boat came into the inclusion zone along the coast. What an incredible view here, looking back down the rocket.
Yeah, I mean, look at all that. And you mentioned perfectly normal.
Completely
vapor.
normal, yep. And they're just saying that they closed out prop load, that is the propellant load or the fuel that's going into the rocket. And again, that's what Vanessa was just commenting about. All of that white vapor is completely normal. The next 50 seconds or so is when we expect that they will finish fueling the booster, as we're coming up on about 2.5 minutes until launch. So far, things have been proceeding pretty smoothly, knock on wood.
Yeah, and we'll just point out, you never know at what stage, if any, things might come to a halt. I mean, I'm trying to remember which one it was, whether it was like 2 or 3 launches ago that we covered here on Live Impact, where they literally got down to seconds, and then they were just like, nope, we're not doing this. We just don't feel comfortable, and they scrubbed it.
It's a very complicated operation. Again, there's no humans on board, but they don't want to lose the rocket. There's still obviously a successful test and data they hope to obtain. I got to see a countdown once for a SpaceX crewed launch with astronauts on it. They got down to T-minus 2 minutes, and they paused it. And this was in the middle of the night after hours of preparation, and everyone wanted to see that rocket go up, but there's a lot of safety precautions in place.
Well, speaking speaking of T-minus 2 minutes, we just passed that mark. So that's getting into the wiggle check, James.
Yeah, so at this point, the 33 main engines will do a little pivot, and we might be able to see that here on stream in a moment. They're confirming that their thrust vector control system can steer the rocket. And so there they are here. We're going to wait to see if they kind of do a little dance for us. There they go. Yeah, there's a little wiggle. And so this is the bottom of the rocket. I mean, it's a very impressive 33 main engines here at the bottom of it, and the cameras underneath here on the launch pad show us this movement. It's kind of a dramatic reminder of the scale of the booster, Vanessa, that ensures that SpaceX can guide safely off the pad and then correct for any drift that may occur mid-flight.
Yeah, that is an interesting shot to get from underneath. Actually, we're coming up now in the next stage, which is about 8 seconds away. So that's a power-related stage where they're going to actually disconnect from electrical feeds coming in from the outside. They'll switch to any sort of batteries and avionics that are on board. And so we might see quick disconnect arms moving, retracting, preparation for liftoff perhaps. Internal sensors will monitor for voltage stability. And this is a period of time where if we see any instability in the voltage, they might actually cancel the launch for now. But essentially, they just want to make sure that Starship can fly on its own.
Yeah, and we've completely bypassed the 40-second mark, which is that last opportunity if they needed to stop down. So this launch looks like it is a go in the next 20 seconds here, Vanessa. So let's listen in.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Go Super Heavy. Go Starship. Thanks for all the historic flights, Pad 1.
Pitching downrange. Booster Raptor chamber pressure nominal.
Booster and ship nominal power and telemetry.
All right, we are about 45 seconds into flight. We're still getting the rattle here at Star Factory. We are seeing 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on Super Heavy as it arcs across the Gulf. Coming up next on Max Q.
So Vanessa, so far a successful launch of SpaceX Starship 11. We're just over a minute since that launch. The commentator mentioned the rattling they get, and the sound from
Max
the
Q
is obviously very impressive. And that
So at this point, we've passed through that period of maximum aerodynamic pressure. The next thing we're looking forward to is going to be hot staging. So we've got 33 out of 33 Raptors lit. Super Heavy makes its way uphill.
Regarding the
hot staging is going to be coming up in just a little over a minute. At that point, we're going to see
the most intense
all but 3 of those Raptor engines on Super Heavy shut down. Our version of MECO
rockets there go to full thrust, producing over 16 million pounds of force. This is, again, one of the successful launches of Starship we've seen, kind of continuing what we've seen with the last couple launches. As we now looking back down Starship, we can see the Texas coastline, the curvature of the Earth here, as we are now coming up on 2 minutes and 40 seconds since launch. Vanessa, that's kind of our next major milestone.
Yeah, and I'll just let you know, James, I brought the audio down on our feed just because you were giving some great information. I just wanted to make sure that you knew what I did with the audio.
I appreciate that.
I also kind of wanted to point out, too, this is just one successful phase of what will be multiple phases to come with this launch, because I did want to point out we did cover one launch where everything seemed to go great and actually went through the entirety of live impact, which we mentioned was a 2-hour window, right? We know we go from 7 to 9, and there was a hiccup at the very end with the rocket coming back. So that is always a possibility that could happen. But yes, regardless, you were saying that we're kind of getting into that 2 to 3 minute mark.
Yeah, so we've just seen separation occur here, and this is the first stage and the second stage separating, which is anticipated here at about this 3-minute mark. And so what happens is there's a little bit of a planned choreograph here after the mechanical clamps release and the two vehicles come apart cleanly. We'll watch for that booster rocket to come back down, which is something that SpaceX has really kind of made their own brand, if you will. The ability to reuse some of these booster rockets has become very routine. We'll watch for that. And then that's actually set to crash land into the Gulf of Mexico, but that is part of their planned test. And now here at about 3.5 minutes after launch, what we are anticipating to see is the booster back burn. And so that is when the Super Heavy completes its short boost back burn, setting a trajectory towards that splash zone that I was just talking about in the Gulf of Mexico, with guidance systems in command and a slow roll, that is, and an attitude adjustment for re-entry. Even after separation, the booster remains under tight control to collect aerodynamic data. You've probably seen it with previous SpaceX launches, Vanessa, but to me it always looks like the video's been being played backwards, because the booster will have its engines on to essentially slow its descent, on enough to slow itself down, not on enough to push itself back up. But again, that booster kind of re-entry always looks like the video of the launch is being played backwards. Yeah. Well, and you talked about some of the elements on the rocket being able to be reused, which is, unique in a different, feature. But there are some parts that will go away about 5 minutes. So we're probably about 20 seconds away from this. There's a single-use ring that will be released. This is the ring that absorbs the ship's exhaust. And this will be drifting away at some point soon. You might even start to see it glow because of the heat. And we're told that actually future iterations of the rocket will use this ring permanently, but for now, this is a disposable part. Yeah, there definitely is still some work in progress. For instance, we've seen with the last couple launches that the booster rocket goes and crashes or descends into the Gulf of Mexico, which is different than the Falcon 9 launches where they land them and they use them again and again and again. I think they're still just kind of working towards iterations with each one of these Starship launches. Yeah. So we're probably about a minute away from the booster landing burn test. And so the booster at that point, we'll see probably once again within the next minute or so, relight multiple engines. It will simulate a tower catch descent. So SpaceX is testing out engine out capability. It's intentionally shutting one motor mid-burn. They're going to try to gather data as it comes to controllability, thrust distribution. We'll see some flames, vapor trail as well, and that will mark the test conclusion over the Gulf. Yeah, you mentioned that catch. So one of the things they hope to do, and they've done some successful tests of this, is actually catch it. So with the Falcon 9 boosters lands on feet, this doesn't have feet coming off of it, so they kind of grab it. And in order to do that, it has to come down under its own control so it doesn't crash, and then kind of has to hover in place until they grab it. So I think we're looking at that moment right now. Let's take a listen back in here.
Booster landing burn shutdown.
And there we heard it, booster landing burn shutdown. We saw a 13 to 5 to 3 V3 demonstration, and into the water we go.
So Vanessa, we didn't get to see it, but they're all cheering because it's landing in the water. It exploded into the water, but that's part of the planned test.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a hard splashdown that they do. High speed. There are kind of different ways that they've done these. Flight 9 was intentionally impacted at high speed. Flight 10 simulated a catch profile before impact. In both cases, the telemetry confirmed successful data capture through contact with the water. This is part of making sure that mid-air recovery is possible.
And now we're looking again in the upper atmosphere of Earth as the main portion of Starship continues its ship ascent with 6 Raptors firing, the vehicle approaching its speed here in space, cameras showing the steady engine glow as that burn ends just around the 9-minute mark. And I think that is where we'll hang out here until we get to about that 9-minute mark, Vanessa, because that is kind of where it will start to coast. A little bit of the video feed breaking up here is kind of to be expected. expected as this kind of orbits the world, and they're beaming back down using Starlink, just like many people use for internet. That's how, of course, SpaceX would use for their own connectivity. And so now that we've reached the 8-minute mark, our kind of next major milestone comes up at 8:57, that is, when the second engine cutoff will occur. That's when all of the upper stage engines will shut down, marking the end of the powered flight and bringing Starship into its coasting phase.
This has been a pretty interesting deep dive, I feel like. I've learned a lot.
And I think SpaceX is also learning a lot. This has been a pretty nominal, is that word that they would use, or routine, or as expected, as optimistic as I think they could possibly go. As far as we can tell watching this, everything has gone to plan. And here comes the shutoff of those main engines as they enter into the coasting phase. You know, one of the things they look for during launch, Vanessa, is whether or not any of the engines failed or turned off. Because again, remember, it has dozens of engines underneath it there during launch. I didn't notice any of them failing to operate. So I think they've checked a lot of boxes here in this launch.
Yeah, and at this point, you know, there's still some time left, but we can say now, more or less, with this one close to being in the books, that they've put together 2 successful, as far as we can tell, launches between August's and today's.
That's right. There was a lot to celebrate on the SpaceX side during Starship 10. This is Starship 11. It's headed for the Indian Ocean. Vanessa, as you mentioned, there have been other launches where unexpected things have happened after the coasting phase or during the re-entry phase. So we will continue to monitor this on Live Impact News as we continue on through the evening.
Yeah. Might be a good time for a break. Of course, we will let you know if we see anything in the next couple of moments as we are taking that break. But we'll be back in 2 minutes, folks, either with more on the Starship 11 or any of the feeds coming into our Live Impact newsroom.